We published a second paper in JCM, which was the treatment of borderline hypertension. That is, people that were at risk from their blood pressure, but not high enough risk to justify the risk of medication. And of course, their blood pressures dropped proportionally. After we published these papers, we were approached by the International Union of Operating Engineers, one of California's more powerful labor unions. And they said they were interested in offering our program for their members because they were spending millions of dollars in treating blood pressure elevations and diabetes. And we presented our information. That was interesting at a meeting. Dr. Lyle, our clinical psychologist, and myself went to a meeting. We presented our data, and they had representatives there. They had an NIH reviewer there who reviewed for the National Institute of Health. There was a actuary that calculated the costs of everything. They had representatives of the union as well as the contractors. And after we presented our data, the contractors' representatives were objecting to the costs of adding an additional program like ours to the benefit. They thought that they spent enough on health care as it was, and they didn't think sending people to a resort was going to help them too much. Then I described a little bit about what happens when you go through fasting. You know, the low back pain, the nausea, the skin rashes, some of the other interesting symptoms that come up. And after a while, they decided maybe it wasn't really a vacation, but they still objected. But the NIH reviewer said he'd reviewed our data and he thought that it would actually result in a cost savings by getting people healthy. The most interesting thing to me was the actuary who had done a bunch of calculating during our presentation. You could see him running his numbers. And you need to understand that union members, if they live long enough to retire, get a monthly pension benefit. And he said, Dr. Goldhamer, if we do this program and it works, won't it dramatically increase our costs of retirement payouts by making them live longer? I know. I didn't know what to say. Guy stood up. I knew he was a crane operator because his neck was like twice as big as my thigh. And he said, listen, little man, you should remember who you work for. He said, you work for us. Why don't you calculate how much money we're going to save when I come back there and break your neck? And then they voted unanimously to make our program a fully covered medical benefit for any member of the union or their family that had high blood pressure or diabetes. And they asked us to do a study to see what would happen, and we did. And we took the first 30 consecutive members that they sent us who underwent a 3-week stay. They lost 26 pounds on average, and at follow-up they were down about 28 pounds, which means they'd maintained much of their improvement. Their systolic and diastolic blood pressures had also maintained, and they saved more money in the first year than the entire cost of the program, largely because of reduced pharmacological and hospitalization costs. And so they went on for over a decade. We worked with this union and treated over 100 of their members with diabetes and high blood pressure. I always remember, though, the very first gentleman they sent us. They made this program a fully covered benefit, so there was no expense to the member. They sent us a gentleman whose blood pressure was 240 over 120, capped out on 5 medications, but they didn't tell him what the program was. They just told him to come to this place, and he thought he was going to get what? Another drug, yeah, you know. And he showed up, and, you know, he had a huge belly on him, and he was looking around. And he said he thought he was in the wrong place. I said, no, I got your name's on the list here. You're in the right place. He goes, no, I don't think so. I said, you're here to get well. He says, well, it's not me. I'm not sick. Of course, then I'm a little pissed. You know, it's like, what do you mean you're not sick? Your blood pressure's 240 over 120. You're capped out on meds. You got a keg on your belly. I said, not only are you sick, you're going to die. And he said, well, aren't we all going to die? Valid point. So I thought, okay, different tact. I said, look, you're taking $880 of medication each month. If we get you off all those drugs, you'll save a lot of money. And he said, what do I care? I don't pay for the drugs, the union does. So at this point, I realized this is not my normal self-selected, highly motivated patient. I'm trying to think, what am I supposed to do now? It's my first guy. I don't want to, And of course, I'm thinking about his medical history, and what do we know about males, particularly that have diabetes and hypertension? Yeah, so I thought, huh? I said, if we get you off all those drugs, we may be able to do something about your little problem. So when he stood up, I was starting to think that wasn't such a good idea because he was a pretty big guy. He said, "Well, why the hell didn't you just say so?" So we're, thinking, okay, got his attention. And he was telling me about his diet. And this was his diet. Except I couldn't get a picture without that nasty green stuff at the top there. He said if they made a mistake and put that on, he would take that off and throw it away because he didn't like that green stuff. So I know before we started fasting, we had to try to get some real food into him. And so we gave him some food. And, he tried to eat it, but he was like, I'm thinking maybe we missed, maybe he's got a big tumor we missed or something. Can't seem to swallow the food. So I sat down next to him. I said, "It looks like you're having trouble with the food." And he said, "What food?" He said, "This is not food." He said, "This is disgusting." He said, "If I have to eat tasteless swill like this the rest of my life, I'd rather just die." He said, "Why don't you go out to my truck and get my 12 gauge when I'm not looking? Just shoot me in the head." So we checked him in. Make a long story short, he had a 26-day water fast. He lost almost 50 pounds. He normalized his blood pressure, his blood sugar levels. And afterwards, we were giving him the same food again, only now he was actually eating it. When I sat down with him, I said, "It looks like you're doing better with the food." He said, "Yeah, your damn chef's finally getting the hang of it." Took me 20 minutes to convince him it was the same food. He said, "No, that stuff you gave me when I came in was disgusting." He said, "This stuff's not bad."